Record. All right. Okay. So, hello to our listeners. This is once again Not the Last Word, a Catholic podcast on finding one's path through stories from inspiring people. And I am Clar, and with me is Elsie.
Hi, everyone.
And this time around, we have another interesting person, but closer to home than our other podcasts. So we're all in Metro Manila this time. When the other podcasts were not always. And we are very pleased to be joined by Miss Leanne Rosal, or we'll just say Leanne. So
Yeah,
without
yeah.
the miss.
Hello.
Hello. Um, I guess to start things off, where are you now, Leanne? What did you do today? Just so we know what your day to
Mm,
day seems like.
Today, this morning, I went to Cavite, Naik. I went to Naik, Cavite. I was invited by JJ ICSI, the parang dito, the Social Action
Mm.
Institute of the Jesuits. So JJ ICSI, John Lewis Carroll Institute. Papatayin ako ng Ateneo na hindi ko alam. Pero JJ ICSI, no? We were giving a session on Catholic social teaching, no? Specifically, preferential option for the poor, for the youth of Santa Maria de Candida Parish in Cavite. So the young people there. That's something that I did this morning. And we spent like 6 hours in traffic going back and forth. So,
Oh my gosh.
so parang kanina lang ako umuwi, no? Geographically, I'm here in Quezon City, but I've been in Parañaque for most of my life. I just recently made a move.
Okay, to be closer to where you work,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
are guessing. Um, so could you tell us about what you are doing now? You are working in Quezon City because.
Mm. I teach in Ateneo, no? So I'm a theology lecturer. I'm part of the Department of Theology of the Ateneo de Manila University. I've been there for 5 years already. So specifically, the subjects that I taught and I teach up to now, no, I initially taught the Theo 151 course on leadership and commitment, no, but I was I was transferred to Theo 13, 13113, which would be theology of marriage, family, and vocation. No? So basically, that's what I think I've been called to teach, especially vocation. So I teach that in Ateneo. I also teach that every Saturday in Don Bosco School of Theology on the masteral level. So yeah, that's what I do during the weekdays. So the weekend as well, no. But in youth ministry as well, no. So I'm also part of the Salesians of Don Bosco Commission on Vocations, no. The Philippine North Province of the Salesians. I've been invited to sit in that commission. So, I think if you would ask me what would be my specific uh, expression of youth ministry, that would be vocational accompaniment. No? So that's something I think I've been doing, no, for the past years, no, guiding young people to discover where God is calling them.
So your byline would be educator, youth minister, and I don't know
Vocational
what vocational
co-journeyer, gano'n.
co-journeyer.
Puwedeng gano'n, oo.
Yeah. Okay.
How nice kasi Miss Lian, na-meet ko si Miss Lian in one of the retreats
Hmm,
of the Archdiocesan Commission on Youth.
hmm,
So si Lian yung speaker doon. And from there, I was fascinated of your story of how you are sa youth ministry, tsaka sa academe din, sa world
hmm,
ng academe. So ano ko naninibago akong hindi kita tawaging Miss Lian, pero sige, Lian for
Lian na lang.
Lian na lang.
Oh, parang feeling ko nga I wear many hats. That's why in
Oo.
Ateneo, I'm called Miss Lian. But outside, I'm called Ate Lian. No? So,
Yes.
kaya
Youth
sabi
minister
ko,
hat.
kailangan may distinction yun. Di ba? Parang, mahirap dun kapag kunyari, estudyante kita, pero you're also a Salesian youth, no? I had that
Mm.
student, such a student, no? So, inside the classroom, he calls me Miss Lian. Outside, he calls me Ate. Accidentally, in the classroom, he suddenly called me Ate Lian. Ganun. So, nagulat yung mga yung mga kaklase niya. Parang,
Uy.
Ate? Anong ate? Yun. So, Lian na lang. Lian would be fine. Yeah.
Yes, Lian na lang. Sige. Siguro, let us,
Mm,
well, take several steps back.
mm,
And we would like to ask you, how were you as a child? And maybe let's look back. Paano ka nagsimula as a child? What were you like?
mm,
And maybe eventually how this all led you to where you are now.
mm. When I was a kid, no? No, I think, oh, kung sino ako ngayon, ganun ako nung bata ako. I'm an extrovert, no? Very, I think, too extrovert-ish, no, when I was a kid, no. And my mom would usually tell me na I would walk in our street, going to the other street to go to my aunt's house. And along the way, I would usually wave at people and say, hello. Hi po. No, so when I was older, there was like a kapitbahay I saw in the grocery and sabi, "Uy, ikaw yung batang laging naghe-hello." Ganyan. So, that's what my mom told me, no. But when I was a kid, I grew up kasi in Saudi Arabia. So I was born there. Not
Mm.
literally, parang I was going back and forth, no. When I was a baby, when my parents could already fly me to the Philippines. So yung first, I think 2 or 3 years ko, I spent it with my uncle and aunts, no. Um, well, providentially, me spending that was a double-edged sword-ish kind of situation. Kasi while it was also a wound that had to heal when I was growing older, no, the wound of abandonment. That was also, I think, a grace moment because me being a Salesian and a Salesian youth minister at the moment had its roots when I was young. So my uncle was part of the PPC of the National Shrine of Mary Help of Christians. So he was really close to the Salesians. He was a Salesian cooperator and a benefactor. And when I was younger, my cousins who would be, aspirants in the, what do you call this? In the, being aspirantate sa Bacolor and Canlubang, I would always tag along, no? So, before, ang akala ko na yung mga pare was really just Salesian. That I grew up with
Mm.
the Salesians. No? Um, my first figure of faith, and I would usually tell people this, my first figure of faith is Father Eduardo Revilla. He baptized me. But for the next 7 years, I would have glimpses in my memory of him teaching about going to the Adoration Chapel, no, about being a good kid and behaved, ganon, no? One memory would be, when you're young, di ba, sa parish, pangarap mo ikaw yung chief angel na kukuha ng belo kay Maria during Easter. So, when I was around 6, I had the privilege to do that. Yung ikabit sa harness pababa. Pero Father Revilla was really ah, kind of like a joker. So he he asked me to memorize Regina Celli in Latin. So I was singing in Latin while getting the veil, no? So memorize ko pa yon. Um, and then he left for Papua New Guinea when I was 7 years old. But I really remember him as the Salesian who, who would be my first figure of faith. And so my first figure of faith would not be my parents, no. Um, my aunts and uncles would also teach me to how to pray, but I would really remember Father Edu.
Can
Later
I
on,
just
yeah,
sorry,
go.
just to cut
Yeah.
in.
Hmm.
For those who don't know, who are the Salesians?
Oh, yeah. The Salesians of Don Bosco. Ah, they are, well, the charism of the Salesians would be young people. No, the
Mhm.
founder is Saint John Bosco, so or Don Bosco. So
Yeah.
most of the schools that we know are no, are Don Bosco, ganyan, Don Bosco Makati, Don Bosco Mandaluyong. So his charism is really directed to the youth, no, especially those who are underprivileged and who are poor. Yeah. So
Mhm.
the accompaniment of the young, that would be the charism of the Salesians. Yeah. So yun. So
So
ay, yun nga.
you were accompanied by a Salesian from an
I
early,
was.
early
Yeah,
age.
early on, no? Pero later on kasi my parents became active when they came back. They became active in Couples for Christ. So I I grew up no learning ministry through Kids for Christ and Youth for Christ, no? And then
Same
eventually,
here.
yeah, couples, 'di ba? But it was kind of revolutionary back then, eh, no?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the missionary zeal really came from Youth for Christ, no? And then much later, I would be also serving as a full-time missionary, no? So I became a nurse, pero after 2 years, I discerned, no, after World Youth Day, to go full-time. No? So para a total of 4 years, I spent as a full-time missionary before I was called to be an educator, and I think I found my vocation as an educator talaga, no. Pero hindi pala nawala yung pagiging youth minister. So many years after, when I was studying my masters in Don Bosco School of Theology, Salesians were, I guess, the they were the ones who really brought me to God, no? I mean, who saved me from myself. Kasi I remember studying masters very wounded during that time, and um the two Salesians who passed away 2 years ago, who became my mentors as well, and my spiritual directors, were the ones who really guided me to be a better person. I mean, to love my family, to make sense of things, yan. And then eventually, they also mentored me to teach about Salesianity, about vocations, no? So, yun. So, that I guess that's how things were. And then eventually nga, I realized when I was discerning na, I've been Salesian since I was young, and
Mm-hmm.
the signs were there. So, it
Mm.
just had, I guess life just really took me to different twists and turns, no? Kasi nga, at least, no, in now being a youth minister with the Salesians, I think I'm able to what do you call this? To bring they say, no, to bring into to the what do you call this? To the congregation and to the Salesian family, the missionary zeal I learned in the charismatic community. And the skills that I learned in the charismatic community are the skills now that I use to mentor other animators. So, yun. So,
So
and then,
yeah, there's several touch points there, and I think we can
mm,
go through each of them.
mm,
So I'm sure a lot of people who might be listening might not have ever been in a youth ministry or
mm,
connected
mm,
with one, right? Or I mean, we have the advantages oftentimes of going to Catholic schools, but
mm,
I guess not all of us also. But for those who or have never been in the charismatic communities or charismatic
mm,
movement, can you explain what that was? It's kind of the pipeline, right? The Kids for
mm,
Christ, Youth for Christ,
mm,
so on
mm, mm.
pipeline. Could you explain your journey there and what that is actually?
Well, ano siya, parang it's a community. So you're part of the Catholic Church, but it's a community that is transparochial, meaning you will be found in different parishes and dioceses. So, but you're clustered according to geographical location. So, my family resides in Parañaque, so I made friends in that community. For those who are there in my area, like in my village, or better living, no? And then, um, well, we had meetings usually during the weekend. So when I was Kids for Christ, we had kids assemblies, and in the kids assemblies, I learned how to pray the rosaries, about the saints, ganon. But I guess the tito and the tita, no, the couple in charge, was kind of vision. They were kind of vision, like a visionary of some sort. They trained us already at around 12 and 13. So I think my gift of writing was also because of Tita Maita Cabinyan, who's now in Singapore. And she would encourage us to write, no? And then during the time wala pang yung we're not no internet yet. So uh we were taught how to write, how to do creative writing, news writing, ganon. And then I would design the newsletter of the kids, and then we would go and distribute that sa mga bahay-bahay, ganon. Youth for Christ, when we went to Youth for Christ, kind of we were like already like groomed to be leaders, no? So in a way, yung leadership skills that I think I have now is really because of Youth for Christ and Kids for Christ. And then um I would be I was taught to also accompany my fellow youth, no. So when I was appointed as a household head, I would be handling like 4 or 5 girls, no, who would be near my house. And then we would be meeting like twice a month, and then there would be a module wherein we would follow. It's a module of prayer and based on the Bible. And we would do sharing. We would go from house to house so our parents know each other. So, we also eat, ganon. And then, naging
Mhm.
barkada. Then, and then I would be also learning how to listen to stories, about and of people and how they would share, ganyan, with me, ganyan. So, yung empathetic listening through the years, parang, it really began when I was 13. And then, may mga big assembly. So, I would find that I'm part of a larger community, not only in my village, but over the Philippines and the world. So it felt like you're part of a big movement of change. So that went on until I grew older. Parang ano na lang siya every year. So parang dumating nga yung point I was telling God when I was around 33 in a retreat na, my gosh, my weekends I gave to you. Ganon. O talaga, parang sabi ko, yung gusto ko na magpahinga from youth ministry, I was really bargaining. Was I saying, wasn't the all my weekends given to you enough? No. No, pero wala eh. Ganun talaga. Pag tinawag ka ng Diyos, tuloy-tuloy na siya. So, that's what we do. No? And then, I learned how to give talks. No? Kasi we would be
Mm.
invited to give talks. We would be
Yeah.
trained with that. So, parang I remember na I knew I had the knack for public speaking, but how I guess I was able to connect the dots and to make the reflection deep and how to give it with depth. That's what I learned being mentored by ates and kuyas ahead of me. No? So and later on, I would also do the same. So it's like a movement of young people that's not dominated by clerics and nuns. So it was really
Mhm.
lay empowerment, no? That's why when I went to the Salesian, nagulat ako na, puro pare. And then,
Yeah.
siguro, siguro kasi I don't know, maybe strong yung presence ko. So later on, I would find myself na hindi din ako takot to be at the level of the priest, no? Parang at the level of the nuns. That's why later on, I think, I was called by God to even teach them or form them. So, parang at 30 years old, you would already be forming nuns and priests. So, parang, ewan ko, what happened along the way. Pero dun dinala ng Holy Spirit. So, yeah. So, a charismatic community of young people is like a support group of or where you
Exactly.
grow, you get to know your skills. You eventually get to know your vocation as well.
And as you were entering adulthood,
Mm.
I guess for a lot of young people, the transitions are when they enter college and they choose
Mm.
what they're supposedly supposed to become, which doesn't
Mm.
actually happen a lot of the time. And then when they exit college and then they have to go into the world of work. Do you, what do you remember from that period of like those decisions that you had to make as a young person?
Were there a
Well,
lot of explorations din ba?
wala. Kasi my parents are strict.
Okay.
My parents just had one path for me. They wanted me to become a nurse. That was it. So, that was actually one of the hinanakit ko from sa parents ko before. Well, before, pero okay na kami ngayon. Parang it made sense naman why I went to that path, no? Pero, yun nga I had no choice because my parents were really, really not only strict perfectionists as well. So, uh, even if I wanted to become a lawyer, and I was telling my parents I wanted to become a lawyer, my dad and my mom were insistent that I would be a nurse. Kasi nga, noong time na yun, mayaman if you mayayaman ka if you become a nurse. So, wala, I had no choice. My mom had connections with Makati Med, so I studied in Makati Med even if I didn't like it, no. I actually wanted to study in Ateneo. Pero I don't know what my mom did during sabotaged my exam day. Parang ganyan. basta long story na yun. Anyway, parang, yun nga, I studied nursing. I found joy doing service to others, no? Taking care of the sick. I actually kind of envisioned myself na to become a nurse, no? Pero when I was already working in the hospital, I gave it a try for 2 years in National Kidney and Transplant Institute. I found that the shifting schedules were not sitting well. It was not sitting well with me. Parang I was missing a lot of youth events. And I don't understand why I wanted to be in those youth events. Parang napo-FOMO ako na nandun ako sa ospital. But I tried my best to really be of service to my patients. Like, I understood that I was not just a nurse, but on the side, I would offer the sacraments, no? So, naging friends ko yung mga Camilians kasi lagi silang, ito na naman, tumatawag na naman yung nurse na nagpapapunta dun sa, sa ward, ganyan. Because I believed I believed in the power of confession and the Eucharist. So, I would tell my patients, gusto niyo pong gumaling ng maaga? I-will kita dun sa chapel. It was also me wanting to go to mass. Parang ganon. And find an excuse to go
Sama
to mass.
kayo.
Sumama ka sa ganon. Kunyari sabihin ko sa superior ko, sa head ko na, oh, the VIP patient would like to hear mass. So, ako naman, pupunta ko dyan. Pwede ganon. So, tawag dito, it wasn't my decision talaga. Until I was really praying to God na, I hope I can make my own decision already kasi pagod na ako. So, that was when then an invitation to join World Youth Day came. And then, basta to cut the long story short, na dapat, hindi ko alam na ma-approve yung visa ko because I was a nurse. At ang daming nade-disapprove na visa. So, I went to Madrid. So, the World Youth Day I attended was World Youth Day Madrid. And it was in World Youth Day Madrid, especially during the Vigil Mass, when I really felt that God was telling me na, you don't have to be afraid, no? Don't be afraid when I call you. When you go back to the Philippines, you'll do other things, no? And you just have to get out of the hospital. But not exactly like that, but his words was, I brought you here in Madrid to experience that I'm stronger than the storm. Kasi there was a storm in Cuatro Vientos during that time. So sabi niya, and look at that, no? Para everyone, despite the storm, stood firm in the faith. And that's something that I'd like you to do. So when I went back to the Philippines, parang ako, it was already a signal for me to not be fearful, to tell my parents that I want to reclaim my life, no? And it wasn't really parang a good, or it wasn't a good for a conversation with my parents. When I became a full-time missionary after that, we really had hindi magandang relationship for many years, no? And they didn't understand my life choices. So, and I couldn't even tell them na I was praying for all these things, no? I was discerning well the things that the paths I was treading, diba? So, it took them time, no, eventually to realize na, oo nga, tinatawag talaga siya ng Diyos, no? And parang it took many years. Pero, ayun, the decisions were not easy. Kasi nga, parang people felt na, saan ka ba talaga pupunta? Pero, I was really deciding where God was sending me. Kunyari, after 3 years in the in missionary life, he called me to be a campus minister in Poveda. Then in Poveda, parang to what do you call this? To study masters in DBST. Then not knowing that those choices would lead me to my real vocation, no. So from being a campus minister to studying, now that I'm teaching theology, um I'm doing youth ministry, parang everything's falling into place, no. So I
I
don't know. Yeah. Go.
I was so I guess I'd like to like highlight or think about that
Mm,
that part where saying yes, even at a very initial stage,
mm,
usually means a lot of uncomfortable conversations
mm, mm,
because people don't understand
mm,
the choices, right? Can you, I mean, about the missionary part, because for a
mm.
lot of people, they have this imagination of what missionary means.
Yeah.
And it's usually not a layperson because of the,
Yeah.
we watch a lot of TV. What does it mean to be, I mean, what did it mean to be a missionary for that time, the role that you were
Mhm.
in?
Well, I worked for Couples for Christ Foundation for Family and Life. No, now it's called Missionary Families for Christ. I was initially assigned to the media ministry, social media ministry. Uh, I was designing PowerPoints, making posters, even it wasn't my core gift, no. But that experience after a year led me to the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines. So I was also briefly assigned there for a year. Uh, they needed someone who would assist in the launch of the Year of the Laity. That was around, I think, 2014. The CBCP president then was Father Soc Villegas. So he was kind of like my boss, no? And my bishop, who was Bishop Jesse Mercado, was the what do you call this? The head of the commission, the Episcopal Commission and the Lay Apostolate. So he was also my boss, no? So I was assigned to coordinate the activities, the online ones and the meetings. No? But later on, Father Saul and Bishop Jesse would eventually tell me, okay, they need a youth speaker who would explain the year of the laity. And that was, I think, the time when I rediscovered the gift of speaking. Because I was so insecure about myself when I was a missionary. I felt that I just wanted to be hidden or I wanted to be in the background. Not parang di din naman ako nabibigyan ng opportunities nun to speak, no? So, when I was in the CBCP, I was led to many speaking engagements, and then one thing led to the other. So parang ako, oh nga no, parang you speak and then people's hearts are touched, and then suddenly you see that it's not you, and then there is something bigger than you there. And then I think the pivotal moment then was when I was invited to speak in the plenary of bishops, no. And after that 15-minute speech on social media and how they need to be involved in social media, that was the time when they had their Twitter accounts. So, no, parang yun yung background story nun. And then parang I remember Father Sok, who's still up to now my once a year spiritual guide. No? Parang up to now. Uh, tawag dito, I remember him saying na, do you think this will be the last? That you will be afraid? No, no.
Hmm.
So later on, I found myself in very fearful places. Like being a woman who would preach in a seminary, ganon.
Mhm.
And to be stared down, like, babae ka, ba't ka nandito? Ganon. And
Mhm.
there would be many instances. No? So, parang first hand, yung mga ganon, yung experiences of being kind of like rejected because you're young, you're lay, you're a woman. But later on, they would find out, oh, she makes sense. No? Oh, she's called by God. Ganon. So, yun. So, yun, that's something that I think what I'm really doing at the moment. No? Parang, I
So
usually find myself in areas na, uh, yung areas na
yeah,
I believe na, bakit ako? Kasi I'm young. No?
Mm.
I
So,
in
many
a
times.
way, it's kind of like you were slowly being called to be a preacher. Is that, if I don't know
Mm,
if that's the
mm,
word, but
mhm,
yeah,
mhm,
from being in the background for a while,
mhm.
you're a preacher.
Hmm. Ay, oo, kasi parang dun ko na-realize na you would want something else, pero God
Mhm.
will tell you, that's not what I called you to do." 'Di ba? So, parang I remember nga, yun nga, yung time na I wanted to be like Teresa of Lisieux, yung alam mo yung hidden, the little way. Pero my spiritual director then was telling me, like months ago, he was saying, there are saints like Damien of Molokai who would be called to go to a specific island to evangelize people there and to be a saint there. But there are people like Saint Teresa of Avila who would be put on the spotlight. Or sabi niya, or like Ignatius of Loyola, or the saints who would go around and speak. Sabi niya, I don't think sabi niya, well, ikaw, mag-isip ka, are you Damien of Molokai? Ganyan. And then parang eventually I had to really accept na, no, I don't think I'm Damien of Molokai. Parang, even if I wanted to stay and just confine myself in one place, parang that was not the movement of the spirit. No, until
You were Teresa of
recently,
Avila.
Oo.
ganon. Hindi, pero feeling ko Catherine of Siena ako. Para
Catherine
lang,
of Siena.
na I wanna make a shout out to Javier Gomez, no? So, pero, pero feeling ko Catherine of Siena talaga ako. Parang ganun. Kasi like ko siya, ganyan, matapang siya. Kumakausap siya ng mga taong importante, gano'n.
Mm.
So I think yun. I think eventually I had to accept that fact that we are called in a specific manner, and then that there's grace there. Na eventually you will find out na it yeah, it's your God gifted you with abilities to do the mission, but largely it's grace. No? Kasi minsan at the end of each activity I would say, "Whoa, that happened." "Whoa, what just happened?" Ganon. Pero you also know na it's your voice speaking. Pero the ideas, how you delivered there's a supernatural thing that would be happening, no? And siguro ako, I'm grateful to be able to be in that part wherein it's like heaven and earth meeting. And whenever I do something, I know God called me to do.
Like I'm something you mentioned earlier resonated with me about having that fear.
Hmm.
I
Mhm.
think for a lot of us, fear signals that we should retreat, right? But
Mhm.
how did you discern that fear was where you were supposed to go?
Mm, no, actually kasi matatakotin talaga ako. If I think my default is fear, no? Uh Siguro also because, just to disclose, no, way back I was also diagnosed with anxiety, no. Well, later on naman sinabihan na ako finally ng therapist ko na, oh, you no longer have that, no. Pero I was really fearful, no. Parang I think it also was because I was insecure. No, I wasn't really, paano ba? I wasn't sure about mm, my gifts. Gano'n. Even if I knew I could do such things, parang I would just always find myself parang okay na ako dito, like dito's hidden. Um, okay lang na second place lang ako kahit na alam kong kaya I could reach for the first, no? Um, I discovered why a year ago lang. That's why nga sabi ko, God is not finished with you yet, eh. Parang when you constantly listen to Him, you also you're guided by someone like a spiritual director, and you're also guided by the Holy Spirit every day in prayer. He would reveal things to you, eh. Like when you think you're healed by some wound, so there's another wound that would explain why you're so insecure. So I just a year ago, no, when I was giving a retreat, no, when I was giving a retreat to grade 6 students, I realized that much of my insecurities about, the fear that I had, um, going in front of people, even if I know I'm called to speak up, and I have ideas that might be challenging for others. I it well that got parang when I was grade 6 kasi parang may nangyari ng grade 6 na di ba, when you're in grade school, that's the time when you are achieving things, when you're discovering your gifts and
Mm.
talents. That's that stage in psychology wherein um you're building up your self-confidence. But when I was in grade 6, suddenly an incident in school na parang napahiya ako ng ibang teachers ko, um and my parents were ano ba, may kakaiba yung parents ko before. So they were kind of verbally abusive before. So nung grade 6 ako, I remember na that was the start of me fearing to go to the heights. No? So
May
when God
trauma.
is, yeah, yeah. No, so when God would call me to ascend to a certain height, I would always say, dito lang ako. No? Dalhin mo lang ako dito. Pero kasi 'di ba, sometimes the Holy Spirit would be so strong and you're sensitive to that. And mahal mo ang Diyos. 'Di ba, 'pag mahal mo yung tao, kahit ayaw mo, gagawin mo. Tapos magrereklamo ka after. Ganun ako eh. Naging ganun yung dynamic ko. So, parang iiyak-iyak ako, nanginginig ako in fear, gagawin ko naman siya. Sabihin ni Lord, magsalita ka sa mga obispo, gagawin ko naman siya. Pero katakot-takot na hindi. And bargaining yan before. Na katakot-takot na luha yan. And then, gagawin mo siya, and then you will feel happy. And then eventually you'll sink down again. Tapos parang sabihin ko, no, that was just coincidental. And then uulitin niya. And then I realized during that retreat with a grade 6 student who stayed in the chapel after everything else was done and was telling her story, no, which was similar to mine. Parang God, during that time, when I was sitting beside the grade 6 child, sabi niya, ikaw to, di ba? Naalala mo? Parang sabi ko, oo nga, ako yun. Tapos nung tinanong ako nung kid, sabi niya, would everything be okay one day? And then parang I found myself asking the same question when I was young. So parang sabi ko sa kanya, I don't know what's going to happen to your life. But if you choose the right things and if you choose if you choose God all the time, you believe me, no, it will all get better. Not now, but maybe one day. So parang ako, am I talking to my grade 6 self? So parang later, niyakap niya ako. I felt it was like me hugging my inner child. And
Ang
then
ganda.
oo, and then after that, I was crying. I was telling my spiritual director, sabi ng spiritual director ko, he wanted me to go to the counselor again kasi to process my fear. Sabi niya, ay inunahan ako ng Holy Spirit. O tapos na tayo. sabi, sabi niya kasi sa
Nasagot
akin,
na kita.
sagot ko. Actually, he was planning to tell me that, no? Parang go back to your therapist in Emmaus. Maybe you have to process this fear, no? And itong mga pabalik-balik ka. And then, sabi niya, ay, sinagot na ako ng Diyos. Di na kailangan. Okay ka na? Sabi ko, Kasi after that, I realized na, alam ko na kung saan nanggaling yung trauma. So, and because I already know the skills of how I can get back up, coming from many sessions of therapy, and in prayer as well, nakatulong ang grasya. So, I was able to settle na, nga no, parang it came from that wound na I wanted to just be second best. Kaya pala, I did not aim for valedictorian kahit kaya ko. Mga ganon. Or, alam mo yung tipong, I would purposely try to put my grades down para lang second place lang ako. Kasi it felt like, if I would aim for the highest place, if I go down, I would fall hard and it would be painful. Mapapahiya ako. Like when I was grade 6. And I didn't want that to happen again. Pero later on, God would assure me na, if you fall, saluhin kita eh. Anong problema dun? Sinalo kita many times in your life. So, natatakot ka ba when you fall? Eh, hindi ka pa, inuunahan mo na that you will fall. Eh, paano kung hindi? Paano kung i-level up pa kita? So parang ako, okay, sige, game.
I love it that we're having tawag dito, parang navigating your fear 101 session right now. And this fear na do you still encounter this every now and then still now?
Oh, yes. I mean, people would usually tell me, takot ka, anong ginagawa mo? Ba't ka naiiyak? When I would give a retreat, sabi ko, I'm scared. I'm scared to be in front of people. Tapos sabi niya, That's your job every day. You go in front of your students. You go in front of important people. You talk to you talk to people who are beyond your age, and takot ka, and I would say, oo, takot ako kasi siguro ako kasi nare-recognize ko yung pagkatao ko and I'm doing divine work. Pero in that fear kasi, it's not something crippling eh. Now, dati it was crippling. Pero kasi I also prayed for it eh. Kasi sinabi ko kay God, can you please not take away at least this fear? I know I don't like fear. Pero I don't also like to come to a point that I'm too fearless that I do not have a need of you. So, it's okay. Parang sabi ko nga, if I'm so afraid, it reminds me that this is not my work. So when I go there, nag-uumpisa talaga akong nanginginig ako inside. Pero later on, I would find myself parang, yun nga, in the in between of heaven and earth. Parang may ganun yung feeling talaga, na parang hindi na ikaw. And eventually, it ends well. People come to you and tell you that they're blessed, tell you specific things you said na later on you would say, sinabi ko ba yun? Ganon. Oo, I would always find myself like that, no? So, yung, parang ako, the fear, like kunyari si Mary, she also had fear, pero that fear transformed into something else. So, I don't think fear is altogether a bad thing. It actually signals how human you are. It's just that if it becomes crippling, that's not something of God anymore. Pero if it's something that leads you to have greater faith, then some amount of fear is good for me.
Yeah. I think for those who are teachers, they well, people students don't realize that teachers understand fear more than anyone else, because there's a lot of fear that goes into teaching, but that's also just part of it, right?
Go.
So actually, on that tangent, so segue, how did you end up taking theology and teaching it? Which is a leap. So you like nurse, missionary,
Missionary.
other things, campus minister, etc., and then teaching theology.
Hmm. But I was studying masters already, masters of religious studies. I studied that because as a missionary, I felt that I should not rely on the modules of the community for me to preach. I think I wanted to learn something else. Kasi parang ako naniniwala ako sa growth eh. While you're alive, you need to grow. So even if sabihin natin one day I do get that PhD, sabi ko, I don't think I'm still an expert. So I think I still need to learn many things, no? So I was a firm believer of growing and knowing more things. So when I took my MRS, it wasn't really for Master's in Religious Studies in Don Bosco. It wasn't really on the view of being a teacher. Although I felt that I had it in me, no? So when I was it was just really to inform me about my faith. But on the last year of my MRS, I remember walking in the corridor of Don Bosco, and I saw the schedule of the seminarians, no, and what they study for their bachelors of theology, and I suddenly had this feeling and to ask God, "Uy, why are they studying this subject? Gusto ko din." And then sabi ko, "Ba't sila nag-aaral nito, ako hindi?" And I just had to ask that, and I would always go back to that schedule. Sabi ko, swerte naman nila. Sabi ko, our subjects are totally different. Come the graduation rites of St. Pedro Poveda College, the mass presider was Father Soc Villegas. I resigned from CBCP to go to Poveda, and his joke was, parang yung joke niya sa akin, Poveda, magtatagal doon, 2 taon ka lang. Pero it was a joke. Kasi he was suki sa Poveda, and he loved the Povedan community, no? So when he was there, I was assisting him. Naaga siya eh. So sabi ko, hi father. Oh, kita tayo ulit. Like, tinur ko siya sa office ko, ganyan. Tapos sabi niya, masaya ka ba? Sabi ko, Sabi ko to talaga, that those 2 years in Poveda were actually the parang, alam mo yung kung gusto ko lang ng comfort zone, babalik ako dun. Parang, ayokong umalis actually, kasi I think I could die there, no? Saya eh. Pero, God doesn't call you to your comfort zone. So, he was asking me, masaya ka ba? Sabi ko, oo. And later on, we talk. Kami dalawa lang. Tapos sabi niya, ano ba plano mo sa buhay? Sabi ko, dito, sa Poveda. Parang sabi niya, dito? Dito ka lang? Sabi ko, Tapos sabi niya, wala ka bang desires lately? Eh di nakwento ko lang, pahapyaw na, sabi ko, bakit ganun, Father? Sabi ko, yung mga inaaral niyo sa theology, pneumatology, spiritual theology, yung mga gusto kong aralin, hindi ko naman inaaral bilang lay. And then he said, why don't you study with the seminarians? Go study theology itself. Sabi ko, paano po mangyayari yun? May trabaho ako. Tapos sabi niya sa akin, di magbago ka ng trabaho. Sabi niya, ako, magbabago ako ng trabaho ngayon na. But he was very prophetic. Father Sok was prophetic and all every year yan. Kaya pupunta ako ng Dagupan for a pilgrimage kasi para siya yung magse-set ng buong taon ko. So, parang sabi niya sa akin, ang problema mo, pera? Tapos sabi ko, una, pera, oo. Sabi ko, pangalawa, Father, if I will study every day with the seminarians, I would have to shift to a job that would probably, it's life-changing. Tapos gumunta siya sa akin, pera lang pala yung problema mo. Ako sasagot. Sabi ko, anong sasagutin mo? Ikaw, papaaralin kita. Sabi ko, we. Sabi niya sa akin, kasi kami mag-usap, sabi ko, we. Sabi niya, mukha ba akong nagbibiro? Tapos sabi ko, tapos naiyak na ako nun kasi I knew it was my desire. Tapos parang sabi niya, ba't ka naiiyak? Sabi ko, wala, thank you. Sabi ko sa kanya, desire ko pala siya. Tapos sabi niya, ganito gawin natin. Let's do a game plan. Teach part-time, and then I can recommend you, and then study. Study full-time. Tapos, do what you want. Ganyan. Sabi ko, okay. So, hindi naman niya ako ni-recommend. I found my way through Lasal. That was my first 2 years of teaching part-time theology, and then I was also studying. Pero yun nga parang there was something that he said that was very cryptic. Tapos sinabi niya, and then, pagkatapos mag-aral, magturo ka sa seminaryo. Ako? Tuturo sa seminaryo? Sabi ko sa kanya, pupunta akong Dagupan. Sabi niya, punta ka sa Dagupan susunod. And sabi ko, Father, I was 26. Sabi ko, Father, okay ka lang? Sabi ko, wala akong nakikitang kasing edad ko sa seminaryo. Gusto mo ako mag-seminaryo? Tapos sabi niya, hindi, basta magtuturo ka sa seminaryo. Eventually, hindi ako nagturo sa Dagupan. Malayo eh. Sabi ko, layo. Eventually, I was invited in San Carlos Seminary, not because of him, but there was another person who wanted me to teach there. So I taught in the seminary for 5 years. So I taught prayer and faith. And that was new kasi kasi pag nagsasama-sama ang mga seminary formators all over the country, I would find myself as the lone woman who would be teaching faith and prayer.
Wow.
So parang ako, siyempre tinitingnan ako, sino ka, di ba? Sino to? Bakit siya nagtuturo ng faith and prayers, di ba? And up to now, the students I have in the seminary are still in contact with me. So pag may pinagdadaanan sila, pag meron silang kailangan ng counsel, they would ask about their vocation. I would still be there for them. So yun. I think it was because of Father So. But later on, yun nga, after Lasal, I went to Ateneo. I found my place in Ateneo. I also eventually found my place with the Salesians, no? And the rest, I'm still here. And masaya naman ako. Parang, wala na akong hinahanap actually. Pagod na nga ako sa routine eh. Parang pagod na ako na, yung pala when you find your vocation, it's like an everyday seeing things lang, how God surprises you every day. But it will really be routinary. Yung igising ka ganun ulit. Pero you find joy. Kasi you know you're doing what you're supposed to do and what God called you to do. Yung palang wala na akong 3 a.m. thoughts na anong gagawin ko sa buhay. Wala. Parang wala talaga. Wala na. Parang, ang iniisip ko nga kailan ako mamamatay eh. Yun talaga yung iniisip ko. Parang sabi ko, mamatay na ba ako bukas? Nagawa ko ba yung tama ngayon? Okay naman. So, ano na siya, if you ask me, wala na rin akong, dreams for myself. Wala. Ay, meron pala isa lang. Sabi ko kay Lord, pa-joke. Gusto ko lang manood ng VIP soundcheck ng K-pop group kong 17. Tapos okay na ako. Yan lang talaga.
Or
Payroll
baka
ako
naman.
yun lang talaga. Sabi ko kay God, alam mo, wala na akong hinihiling. Yun lang talaga. Sabi ko, dala mo na ako sa kahit saan. Parang, I think I'm pretty happy with my life, no? parang the ebb and flow of things, sinusundan ko na lang talaga ngayon. If he brings me here, okay, thank you. Brings me here, okay. He gets something from me, okay lang. Parang I need to detach from a person, from a place. Sige, go. Pero, yun because when you found where you're supposed to go, it's, ano ka, malaya ka. Sobrang malaya na minsan magtataka ka kung tama pa ba 'to? Gano'n. Tama ba yung you find yourself very happy? But I'm not saying na when you're very happy, there are no, what do you call this? There are no, what do you call it? Challenges and pains along the way. There are. It's just that, paano ba? They take second place.
Mhm.
Oo. Parang, ngayon pag nagsasalita ako, may mga problema din ako, 'di ba? Pero, ewan ko, okey lang. Parang kaya siya, yun.
Do you ever have any doubts or like moments of doubt in the vocation that you've found yourself in and that you've chosen?
Oo, a lot. Una sa lahat, um, parang sorry, I love you, Ateneo, pero okey lang kasi nagkakaroon naman kaming mga diskusyon lately. Pero first and foremost, it's not a financially rewarding job, 'di ba?
Mhm.
Parang that was one of the doubts. Pangalawa, um, nung pagod na ako to drive back and forth, that was another doubt. Parang, am I still being called here? Maybe if I worked in an NGO, then I might earn better, 'di ba? Or, yeah. And then, marami. Parang, most of the doubts would be the insecurities creeping in, me telling myself, um, why you? Bakit ako? Gano'n. So, marami. I think kasi doubt naman is not something negative. Parang doubt informs faith eh. So, parang sabi nga ni Paul Tillich, you need to have a significant amount of doubt in order for you to have stronger faith. Or else, if you don't doubt, then you will not find ways to inform yourself about faith. So, doubt leads you to seek to long, ganyan. So, and when you found it again, you level up, 'di ba? So, you realize na you're wrong all along, ganyan. Or, you might be right all along, pero parang another version of what God wants you to see. So, I do have moments of doubt. Pero ito lang, ngayon, kasi recently lang, hapon lang. 'Di ba? Fresh from the experience. Pero kahapon lang kasi parang there was something that happened yesterday in the retreat of the Salesian lay mission partners that instead of actually me backing down from my vocation, it actually fired me up. Parang ano ba, there was something that happened in that retreat, no? Someone opposed me and for the very first time, in your face, in the retreat, someone questioned me about what I was giving. And I understood because marami pa ring tao ang hindi believe sa babaeng batang nagpe-preach, no? And
Mhm.
they would still want a priest to preach to them. And I understand where they're coming from. Pero it was because of the events of the 3 days that became revolutionary for me and for the community. I realized, and I was told by the Salesian who was there na, don't you understand that you're a prophet? And that changed for me. Kasi parang before, I thought of myself as a preacher. Not seeing na, oh my gosh, yeah. Parang, I know I'm not worthy to be called a prophet, but I am. Kasi sabi niya, don't you see the events of your life where God is leading you? You challenge people, you ruffle feathers. Sabi niya, you bring discomfort when you speak. Sabi niya, even to men like me. So sabi niya, aren't you a prophet? Gumanon siya. Sabi ko,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I am, Father. Ganon. So, feeling ko yesterday, parang sabi ko kay God, that was the missing link in all the insecurities. Yung reclaiming that I have a voice in the church. Parang reclaiming that I'm also called. parang before kasi ang sinasabi ko kay God, do I even have to explain to people that I'm called to this vocation? Parang when I'm called to preach to important people, no, and they look down on me, can't you please convince them that you anointed me here? And walang mangyayaring ganun from God, syempre. Parang hindi naman siya bababa to sabi, hello si Lian, yung tinawag ko. Pero yesterday made me tougher eh. It also made me more courageous to speak my mind. To a point na sabi ko, from now on, tama, I'll be a prophet for young people. I'll speak for the voices of young people who are not heard in the church. And sabi ko nga yesterday, in front of people who were there, in a very gentle manner as well, I was telling them, next time that you will talk ill about young people, ako haharap sa inyo. You have to go through me first. So parang sabi ko, and I was telling this to also the Salesians, no? Na I was telling them what I thought. And I was telling them, can't I also preach the charism given by Don Bosco to you? Are you the only ones who can monopolize the spirituality? I've been meaning to tell that to the provincial and to the council, and maybe that incident became an opportunity. And after that, it felt good. Kasi alam kong ginawa ko yung ginawa. Sabi ko, ang tapang nito. Gano'n. Sabi ko, ay, tapang tayo, no? Parang sabi ko, kaya ko
Yeah.
humarap kaysa sa Papa ngayon, eh.
But like I think a lot of I'm LC, I'm sure you see this. There a lot of young people really wonder about their place in the church
Yes.
because I think going back to doubt, as soon as young people express doubt, which is part of faith, they begin to feel or be made to feel that they don't belong in the church. Well, how would you encourage young people who cannot seem to find the place in their community because of that?
I think this is also what I told the lay mission partners in the retreat, eh. When you're called by God, parang, ano ba? When you're called by God, you're not called by anyone else. You're not called by certain people. You're called by God. And so when you are called by God, you have to stand by that call. You have to own that call as well. Now, when people tell you that you are not bagay, or alam mo yun, no, you're not meant to do this. No, you're not doing things because others say so. Parang I think kasi much of us, we are conditioned by the voices around us. I think it's part of maturity to be able to filter voices and to discern what voice do I ultimately listen to? Kasi there will be voices who will tell you, di ka bagay dyan, babae ka. Hindi ka bagay dyan, laiko ka. Di ka bagay dyan, bata ka pa. And why are you doing that, no? But when you are a firm believer that God called you, and no matter what people say, I think the grace would be the courage, despite the fear, to really abide and do that call. And I think that's what I learned through the years, eh. It was a slow learning until yesterday. Until yesterday talaga na, oh nga no, the prophet Jeremiah was young. He was rejected. I've been rejected many times, no? Yun nga, sabi ko, you reject me, pero ini-invite nyo pa rin ako. Ano ba yan? make your mind, di ba? Make up your mind. Ganon. Pero, yun nga eh, parang I felt na matapang because there were people ahead of me who actually paved the way. And I told myself na, if I won't do this, then who else will? Di ba? And if I won't do this, I might not be able to continue paving the way for other young people to be able to do the same. And I think that's what I'm called to do. So, that means if you're young, do not, sabi nga sa Bible, don't think that you're young, that you cannot speak about their faith, that you cannot do these things, no? Even the little things that you can actually do for service, God calls you to do that. Then you have to believe in yourself that God believes in you. Ganon. And, yun nga, when you're growing older, I think what makes us mature is to choose what voice to listen to. Would it be the voice of your insecurity that would be louder than God? Would it be the other people around you who would say you can't do it? Or the prejudices of others because they think differently, no? Um, Yun. Kasi that's how you trailblaze. That's how you also set a fire on earth. Diba? Parang it's when the only voice that I'd like to listen to is God. And when I know and I'm guided by other people who affirm me that this is God's call, this is God's voice, then it's okay to fear, pero why am I not to do it?
I thank you. Thank you, Lian, for being such an inspiration. Um, Especially for the young people. Just with your story, parang okay, even especially women, faithful women na medyo yun din nagtatanong din, who are we in this community? Who are we in this faith? Wherein we only see men having higher positions, but we know that we also have our faith also grows, our faith are also as strong, and you are that example of someone who is there to, well, represent the women, represent our faith then, syempre. I guess ang ganda ng message mo din, how we can navigate our fear, how we can just also get to know more about ourselves so that we can accept who we are and listen to what God is really telling us where we should go, or direct us where we should go, or and who we should be. So I hope we get to also see more of you in us and in our younger and in our younger audience too.
I think I'm very struck by this, that young people are prophets in a way,
Mm.
or they could be if we let them. Um but listening to the right voice is hard. I think there's just so many
Yeah.
voices when you're a young person, right?
Mm.
What as kind of as a closing, what
Mm.
advice would you give young people who are trying to listen to the right voice, find the path,
Mm.
be the trailblazer that some of them want to be?
Siguro, four things, no? Number one, uh, I think what hinged everything is prayer. You know, you cannot discern when you don't pray. So you have to have a habit of prayer. The charismatic community taught me at 13 years old to wake up at 4 in the morning to talk to God, to open my Bible, to 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 see His message for me in the day through the Word. Later on, when I grew up, there would be people, spiritual directors, who would teach me that God can be found in all things, and I have to be sensitive about that. And then later on, when you get to know the voice who's calling you, you would know paano ba? You would know how he would call. You can actually sift through the voices if it would be your inner demon speaking, an external matinding demon speaking, ganyan, or it would be God, no? Of course, there are principles to that. Saint Ignatius would say so, no? Later on, I had to learn that as well by studying, by the guidance of my spiritual director. So prayer. Number two, find a good guide. So ako kasi I think I was able to make these decisions because I was consulting people who were holy. And I mean, when I say holy, Saint Teresa of Avila would say there would be a guidelines for spiritual directors. Find someone who's good in theology. Why? Because that person can help you decide according to the voice of the church. Parang ganon. Secondly, find someone who's integrated, yung one who has embraced his fears or her fears, her woundedness, and has made sense of them. Ganyan. And someone who's wise, yan, and who has integrity of life. That's what Saint Teresa of Avila would say. Regardless of age. Kaya nga, ang director niya, mas bata sa kanya, si Sa John of the Cross. Get a good guide. I I've always been guided monthly. My conference with my spiritual director for directors for the past more than 10 years have been monthly. Even if I feel that I'm in a good place. Kasi I wanted to be guided. I wanted to kind of be sure that the path that I'm treading is what God wants. And in the course of being guided, nare-realize ko kung saan ako pumapalya. Saan ako, oh my gosh, this is not God. So, eventually, later on, when you get accustomed to what is God, what is not God, although, of course, it has to be well discerned and listened to kasi minsan nga, it could be us talking, it could be just our ego talking, di ba? So, get a good guide. Number 3, I've been telling young people about this too. If God tells you to let go, let go. Definitely, if God tells you to let go of a person, of a place, of something, it would be a hard process to let go. Pero I learned in life na kapag prinulong mo yung letting go, mas masasaktan ka. Parang the Holy Spirit will really do many things for you to advance in faith. So, if He's telling you, or she is telling you, the Holy Spirit is telling you, may bangin, do not cross that line. And then you say, oops, I'm scared, I'm not gonna listen to you. You're crossing that line bit by bit. So, hahayaan ka niya, he will try to do things to convince you kasi he can't do anything with your free will. And then later on, malapit ka na sa bangin, ayaw ka naman niyang mamatay. So, may gagawin siyang mas masakit. So, I realized na ayoko dumating ulit dun sa punto ng bangin na mas masasaktan ako. So, kung masasaktan na ako, masasaktan din naman ako, masaktan na ako ngayon. Ganun. So,
No, no.
no na. Diba? Kasi naman, you know the first stages of a wound that goes gangrenous? Ganun eh. Masakit na yun eh. May wound ka na eh. Ngayon, patatagalin mo na hanggang maputol yung paa mo, huwag mo naman paabutin dun, di ba? Pero may warning ka na. So, when it's still fresh and masakit, gamutin mo na. So, gawin mo na. Kasi, that's how you also learn in life. Parang, I think, you don't get formed as a person if you don't go through letting go. Until you will find yourself with such an inner freedom that makes you happy with the present moment, with little things that you have in life, ganon. You don't search, yun nga, don't have 3 a.m. thoughts anymore. Parang, yun. It's a constant detachment, diba? And while you're growing, you have to let go many times, no? Fourth, kasi nga, when you let go, you have to really kumapit sa grace ni God. So, to understand that everything is grace. Parang even the goodness that parang everything that you have is grace. And the recognition that every day is something to be there's something to be thankful about. And this is something I usually preach in my retreats, no? St. Ignatius gave a good tradition called the examen. And when you get to know that, you understand yourself better. And you know what to do the next day, how to be better. Yun. So, those 4 things. Sabi ko ba 5? Pero alam ko 4 things. So, those 4 things, I think, no? So, that's along the way, something I learned strongly. Those 4 things. Na, if you do those 4 things, you're good. You're good, no? So, at least get guided, pray, let go when you need to. Pero know that when you let go, God will replace what you have let go in your hand with an abundant grace that will allow you to do your mission and do what He wills.
And with that, I think with those amazing 4 points, I think we end this podcast interview, which personally for me felt very enriching. I think as Elsie and I prepare to continue our youth ministry work, this was very helpful, I think. Right,
And
Elsie?
assuring.
Yes. So yeah, so with that, thank you to our listeners. I think the 4 points given today, I feel like they sum up all the past 7 conversations we've had. So that's very helpful. So I encourage all the listeners to revisit them with those 4 points in mind and think about your own lives and the 3 a.m. thoughts that you have and how you can move beyond just thinking about them at 3 a.m. And thank you, Lian, for your time,
Thank
for
you.
sharing yourself. And Elsie,
Thank
thank you
you.
for joining me in this amazing conversation.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you in person.
Yeah, soon. Please.
Sana.
Let's make time. That's totoo. Let's make time. Yes, go.
Yes. Yeah, we should get back to seeing people face to face,
Yeah,
no?
yeah, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and stopping recording.